Why hello you amazing, beautiful people. Welcome back to another solo leveling cut content reaction video. I was gonna say solo leveling reaction, but it's not 100% true. Solo leveling is done. It's over. It's finished forever. It's never coming back. That is it. We are done. It was a great anime. I enjoyed it. I think it ended perfectly, wrapped up nicely, and they put the bow on the top, and we're done. We're done. If that's the case, I may, you know, move to Mars or something. Like, Jesus! How long are we gonna have to wait? I don't want to have to wait more than a week. My word, man. It was so good. Oh. I'm actually so pissed off. I don't want to have to wait. Please announce season 3 is coming out in a month. Oh, my word. And it's like, we got you. We've been working on it this whole time. It's completed. You know what? Here it is. Have all the episodes right now. Anyway, Solo Leveling Season 2 concluded, in case you couldn't get that from my opening. And I told all of you that I would continue reacting to the cut content videos on AniNews' channel, and that's what we're going to do. I don't know what other videos AniNews is going to do around this, whether he's just going to do episode 12 and 13 and be done there. We've seen him do some stuff around the Ant King, so maybe we'll get more. I'm not really sure. Either way, please go subscribe to AniNews, because they are the reason we're able to do these reactions, so go support their channel. Link to it is in the description. Without more talking from me, please like and subscribe to this channel as well. Maybe one day we can get another plaque next to that one. You guys are doing an amazing job at it, by the way. This channel goes up so many freaking subscribers daily. I love you guys. Thank you for supporting it. Anyway, enough of my talk. Let's jump into my first time ever reaction, man. I only got one more of these and we're done as well with these. This is sad. Let's jump into my first time ever reaction to Solo Leveling Season 2, Episode 12's Cut Content.
If every episode got the same treatment that this one did, then perfect wouldn't even begin to describe this adaptation. I'm not just talking about the stellar animation which brought this fight to life, but also the pacing, tone, and even anime original changes which built upon it. Like, we know the Ant King has a skill which allows him to obtain the powers of those he eats, yet in the manhwa and novel he doesn't even use them. He has 5+ S ranks in his stomach, yet for some reason doesn't make use of any of their abilities. So to see the Ant King use these ice powers here in the anime, well, that's a change I very much welcome. It shows the Ant King is constantly evolving in a way that perfectly suits him. This then allowed them to make the fight a lot more even, which in comparison to the novel and manhwa, was, as you'd expect, a one-sided beatdown.
Of course.
So it's here the episode season.
I love, that is the main difference between the novel and the manhwa and the anime. Anime, a lot of the fights more equal, and obviously by being more equal it makes it more epic, at least in my opinion. Some of you disagree in the comment section, like a bunch of you are like, no, it should be one-sided, blah 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 blah. For me personally, I like that it isn't. It makes, especially as an anime only viewer, I think it's quite nice that it's like a bit more equal, but that definitely seems to be like one of the biggest changes.
Its biggest changes, since a large majority of the fight was given through the perspective of others. It's an interesting way to portray what's usually Sung thinking about how strong he's grown. So, if you want to see how this climactic fight differed between all three mediums, stick around as we'll go through all of it.
Here we go.
Episode 24, Are You the King of the Humans? Covering chapters 101 to 104 from the manhwa and chapters 118 to 121 from the web novel.
It's
Let's
interesting
start
how
things off
little
over at the TV
it
station,
covers,
where, unlike how in the anime the
it would
feed
cover like 10
disconnected due
chapters
to a
in
connection
one
issue,
episode.
the broadcast was actually cut off by the director himself. As damaging as it was to his TV station, it was too much to show the country their strongest hunters getting destroyed by a single ant. He refused to broadcast Ma's torture, then Min's subsequent death. This was when he believed everything was over, up until someone would report someone else had appeared on scene. The director believed the only person who could save him was Jesus, but what he saw on screen was probably...
Director! Someone else has arrived into the fray! It's Jesus, isn't it? He's come to... What do you mean it's Jinwoo? That's what I said! Jesus Woo!
Close enough. No one could tell who it was or what they were capable of, but the presence of someone so apparently confident
hilarious.
was enough for the director to make a gamble
Must
on
be
him.
Jesus.
There was a chance this person may not have been a hunter at all, but now the director was determined to see this broadcast through. It's then the story would rewind to a bit before Sung's arrival, where an emotional perspective was given from the cameraman. Despite being backed into a corner, he had zero regrets knowing this was his equivalent of going out in a fiery blaze of glory. He didn't consider himself a true hero like the S-ranks who fought in front of him, but he was intent knowing he could at least support them. So, Where before his life was nothing but menial jobs intended to slowly grow his career, now he was faced with an opportunity he'd never thought he'd get to be a part of.
Yeah, he's in an
His
S-rank
position as a hunter,
fight.
though one he wasn't very fond of, had allowed him to capture something no other cameraman on Earth has. He had shown the world his own country's hunters successfully defeating the boss of an S-rank gate.
I agree.
So,
Shout out this
knowing
guy.
he was the person who captured such footage, well, deep down he was incredibly proud since everyone would get to see the valiant sacrifice of the hunters who fought for them. To him, his life's work as both a cameraman and hunter was coming to fruition. If there was one...
He should have known he was going to be fine. The cameraman never dies, unless it's Starship Troopers. And I have to be honest, there's a lot of similarities, so this cameraman is already on shaky, like, law ground there.
thing he did feel regretful over, though, it was the devastating thought of never being able to see his father again. You see, as the person who took care of him after his mother died of cancer, knowing he'd never get to say
Damn,
goodbye
man.
really hurt. What
Damn.
went to hurt even more was that his last words were so mundane that the cameraman couldn't help but wish they could have talked for at least a little bit longer. Just as life always seemed to be, though, time was ruthless and regret always arrived one step too late. So, with zero energy left to activate any of his tank skills, the cameraman would apologize to his dad, then accept whatever fate was about to come to him. What happened next was an incomprehensible sequence of events, since in one moment he was being saved by this shadowy figure, then the next a person he'd never seen before was forcing him to drink something. Seconds later, he was fully healed, and that's when the cameraman would finally realize this could be the person he thought it was.
That's so
It was
funny.
a truly perplexing turn of events I'm sure would shock anyone.
The guy just went from
Now, the reason
literally
Sung...
just standing there. I like in the anime they didn't really show that the cameraman was really part of the savior scene, not heavily so anyway. But I love that he was just chilling, ready to die, embracing death. Like, right, it's over. And next thing you know, it's like, schling, huh? Glug, 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 glug. What the fuck am I drinking? Oh, I feel so good.
and
Just
didn't
like,
show up
bang.
sooner was because the broadcast he was watching was delayed. By the time he realized it was 10 minutes behind, the damage to Korea's S-ranks had already been done.
Yeah,
Luckily
true.
for him, he was able to save the weakest person present first. Sung's action after would be the most important, since with the other S-ranks still in a dire situation, he needed a way to clear the ants without injuring those they were attacking. The easiest way would have been to just use Tusk, but there was no guarantee such an attack wouldn't hit the others too.
Man,
So
Tusk is
that's
so
when he
awesome.
decided to go with Iron, using his taunt skill to divert the ants' focus pretty much immediately. Sung would praise Iron for a job well
work,
done,
Iron.
then summon
Yeah.
the rest of his soldiers to eliminate as many ants as possible.
It's the boys.
So, given
it's
that
the
Beck now had an
boys.
opening, he would move his teammates to the safest corner he could find, then finally take in what exactly was happening. Ma, who'd had his eyes injured in the fight before, could only ask to know
His
what it
eyes
was
injured.
Beck was seeing. It was a question to which Beck would answer everything was okay now, since for him that's exactly what he was feeling. That reassurance was actually more for himself though, since it was only moments ago Beck fully believed he was going to die. He had even subconsciously called out for help the moment Sung made his entrance.
It must be so fucking peculiar to be an S rank in such severe danger. I don't really know what their history and fight previous to this have sort of been like. I don't know if them being in danger is something that's quite common. Obviously, we know A rank dungeons are dangerous and they've done them. We know S rank dungeons are incredibly dangerous, obviously, and really rare. So, but I would presume that as an S rank, a situation like this is just so unfathomable to like their comprehension. That when it happens, that it's like, shit, me, an apex predator in this kind of situation, I don't believe it.
So, to see Sung easily handle these ants that gave them so much trouble, well, that provided Beck with a huge sense of relief. His hope of survival was now fully rekindled. As far as he was concerned, the aid of Sung was far more reliable than the power of over 20 Japanese S-rank hunters combined. He knew all he needed to do now was just sit back and watch.
From what we've seen,
Beck would then tell
he's
the
no wrong.
cameraman to keep the camera pointed at Sung because as someone who'd glimpsed his power so many times before, Beck knew the country would want to witness the amazing show he was about to put on. After hearing all about Sung through the experiences of others, Beck sat eagerly anticipating a power he'd finally get to witness himself for once.
And that is when Beck decided to pull out some popcorn, and he had a really random pop-up chair, and he just fucking got ready for this
So,
show.
though the job of Beck and
He was
the
ready
other
for
S-ranks
peak.
were done now, the job of the cameraman was far from finished. It was by the time he realized what he needed to do, though, that Sung would have cleared almost half the ants already. He had killed so many he actually lost count, and it was so easy that he found himself completely unbothered by them. Compared to the enemies of the Demon Castle, these ants were quite literally just that. That's when Sung would decide to clear the ants out faster, leading him to resurrect the dead ones without a care for who was watching.
Okay.
Unlike how the anime didn't even show it, Sung wasted no time creating more soldiers for his shadow army.
I think that was a
He
nice
didn't even
touch from
bother
the
to
anime,
hide it
actually.
either, so everyone across the world bore witness to his shadow extraction ability. None could actually understand what it was, but this ability was definitely no longer a secret now.
Personally, I think that was a better decision. I think the way the anime did it with him being worried about showing that ability, not wanting to show it off, and then having that huge moment with Min, like, that was brilliant. Because obviously, up until that point, they had no idea he could do something like that, even remotely. So that makes that Min scene so much more epic and shocking. I feel like if he just came in and started, like, rising everybody, then the Min scene would have been completely, like... It still would have been crazy, because it's like a human, but it wouldn't have been anywhere near as crazy. So actually, I think that was a good shout for the anime to change it there.
So, the cameraman was the first to be overwhelmed by the shock of it, since shadowy ants pulling themselves from the ground was far beyond his own personal scope of comprehension.
Pretty damn scary
Beck
as well,
was a
man.
little more calm himself, but with this being his first time witnessing Sung's summons as well, he was more so in a state of awe. Now, it didn't take long for the shadows to outnumber the living, so with Sung's army of darkness pushing back their counterpart, all those watching gained a little hope again. It was a stark contrast from the bleak despair they felt only moments ago. Since the last thing they saw was the Ant King dismantling their hunters,
I've just realized, the world never saw Sung Jin Woo use his Arise ability at all. Not just in that scene, but ever. They've never seen it.
The viewers were
I wonder if it will
experiencing
continue
was
like that,
quite
or the world's
literally a
gonna know.
roller coaster of emotions. Like, victory seemed assured when the Queen was defeated, then defeat seemed imminent after the Ant King came. Despair took over when reports confirmed Min's death, then everyone was in a frenzy wanting to know what happened after. They couldn't bear not knowing what happened to the other hunters. It was once the feed was restored and victory appeared in sight again that Sung's one-sided massacre would bring forth all sorts of emotion. Most were ecstatic by the sudden turn of events, while those who lost loved ones shed tears knowing revenge was near for them. None knew who this mysterious hunter on their screen was, but what they did know was that they wanted to cheer for him. It was excitement that only escalated.
But what they did know was that he was incredibly handsome, and for some reason, they wanted to touch him.
When they found out he was a Korean too. For the TV director who'd been stressed for some time now, finally he could breathe a sigh of relief since it was looking like his gamble paid off.
That's what,
Min's
bro.
death made it feel like the world was coming to an end, but the arrival of Sung showed him the light at the end of the tunnel. It was the
sounds like
greatest
the
feeling
Indiana
to know
Jones
things
theme
might
music
work out
in the
okay.
background, weirdly.
The remaining hunters just needed to make it to extraction. For the Japan team who withdrew already, any agreement made with them was now null and void. Any loot would no longer be shared, and if Korea wanted, they definitely had a right to demand reparations themselves. Things certainly weren't going the way Japan expected. Matsumoto had thought he planned for every possible situation, yet somehow a single monster had managed to get the best of him. So, shock couldn't even begin to describe what he was feeling right now. To make matters worse, his team couldn't even track where that monster was anymore. The same satellite they'd used to monitor the energy levels of the Queen now couldn't find a monster that was significantly more powerful. So the whole thing just didn't make sense to them. They were able to spot it back when it fought G.O.T, but the large bright light which indicated its powerful presence before was now nowhere to be seen. Not a single speck of light indicated that level of power anywhere. At first, such an anomaly was utterly incomprehensible, up until Matsumoto realized what was really happening. You see, as soon as he thought about it a little bit longer, that's when he understood how this monster was hiding itself. It had perfect control over its magical energy, and as a result could turn it on and off whenever it wanted. This was...
Of course, that does actually make sense, because obviously when it went to fight G.O.T, it went from like, G.O.T being like, I could take this guy on, to G.O.T being like, oh, sugar lumps, man, because he flicked the switch, changed the aura. So in that moment, that would have been when they saw it emitting, and now it's just hiding it again.
Why the research team failed to spot it before the raid, and it's the reason why G.O.T ended up being defeated by it. Japan had assumed their satellite data was all they needed, so never once did they consider the possibility of anything beyond that. It didn't occur to them that the ants would evolve in a way that could deceive them. So, this was what Matsumoto would consider the perfect failure, and as a result, this single oversight would cost them dearly. It was a steep price he fully expected to get worse, since to him it was only a matter of time before this monster crossed the ocean and reached the mainland. And with no hunter capable of standing against it, well, let's just say the potential calamity was terrifying.
There's no way of knowing the answer to this, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. What would happen in a worldwide situation if there's like a dungeon break like Jeju Island, but they leave the island? Would the world come to help? Would like America and China, would they come to help Japan or Korea? Let's say the Ant King, let's say Jinwoo doesn't exist in the situation. The Ant King takes out every single hunter on that island and flies to Japan or Korea. Would countries come to like stop it wiping out an entire country? Or would they just be like, you made your bed? Like, what do you guys think? There's no way of knowing, right? So I guess it's just guess.
It was then that Matsumoto's team would relocate the monster back in the Queen's chamber, indicating it was no longer suppressing its magical energy like how it was before.
I wonder why.
This made Matsumoto assume it was fighting the Korean team, which, if all went well, would take them out too. It was a potential silver lining he thought he could get his hopes behind, up until a separate spot of light indicated another strong presence. At first glance, this light seemed to be as big as the monsters, but on closer examination it actually looked bigger. Not only that, but this second light was also surrounded by hundreds of smaller ones. Sung's shadows were so individually strong that each could be viewed as their own powerful presence by Japan's satellite. It was an oddly beautiful phenomenon none of Japan's researchers had ever seen before.
That's pretty cool.
Matsumoto would then demand to watch the Korean broadcast himself, unveiling the live-action version of what the satellite was showing him.
Bro should have had this on in the background anyway. Like, what a fuckhead. Like, why? He's like, I don't want to watch the Korean broadcast. I don't want to watch it. But it feels like it would have been helpful information. You know, you've got all your tech and your information in front of you, but you can literally see it live for your fucking self. Like, bro, come on. I know it's a 10-minute delay, but still, that should at least be on in the background.
The part of it that made their observations all the more terrifying was the fact the massive source of light was confirmed to be coming from one single person. No one could believe this lone hunter was capable of producing all that. Chairman Go's reaction was exactly as we saw, but if you're wondering why he wasn't in the mission control room from the get-go, it's because his weak heart wouldn't have been able to handle it. I mean, we saw how excited he got just from seeing Sung, and even that was enough to give him a heart attack. So, whether the mission ended in success or failure, just being part of it was too much of a risk for him. It's the reason we see his personal doctor next to him in the manhwa. Seeing Sung extract the shadows of the dead wasn't good for him either, since that too got his heart racing a mile a minute.
This guy
it did also show that Sung had hid the truth from him, but that didn't matter considering what he was doing now. At this point, the chairman was only curious about why Sung didn't want to join the fight before. He could see just how excited Sung was to be there, so for a man who proclaimed to only want to fight monsters, the chairman couldn't understand why he walked away from the opportunity to fight the strongest.
Because people change. And Jinwoo now doesn't want to fight monsters anymore. He wants to retire and get a log cabin up in the woods. Now, it's because people do actually change. And he got his mother back and he wants to just chill with his family, which makes sense. At the end of the day, what are you doing this for? Simple question, right? But what are you doing this for? All of us. What are we doing what we do every day for? Jinwoo was doing it for his mother. So why not spend some time with her?
It was a thought Mr. Go really hoped to get an answer to.
But I don't think
back home the reaction was different too, since before exchanging, he wasn't chilling on a rooftop like Batman, but was actually at home watching the race.
He wasn't chilling on a rooftop like Batman. That's fucking great.
Before exchanging, he wasn't chilling on a rooftop like Batman, but was actually at home watching the raid with his mother. This tracks more with why he wasn't at the raid in the first place, since it shows he really was spending more time with his family.
That's a good point, actually.
In any case,
he was supposed to spend time with his
family,
family,
it was the moment things went bad on television that Sung would leave the room and make the switch. It seems he stopped the TV from working too, since he likely didn't want his mother to see he was a hunter yet. Unlike how Sung's mom already knows in the anime, in the manhwa and novel he's still keeping it a secret from her. He didn't want to burden her with the same feelings their dad did. Now,
Makes
switching
sense.
back to the raid,
It makes sense, but also doesn't make any sense because the whole fucking country knows. So how the hell has he kept that a secret?
since saving Cha was the #1 priority, that meant getting everyone out was the most important. It was before they could that's when the Ant King would appear, once again depressing every viewer who was watching.
Look at this
Since the
dude.
last time they saw it, it was demolishing their hunters. Now they were worried the same thing was about to happen again. After eliminating Cha in one hit only, no one really thought a ranged mage type would do any better. So
Sure,
Beck would be the first to
ranged
offer
mage type.
assistance, but Sung would insist no one step up at all. Reason being that, to him, the fight would be way faster if they didn't. It was a suggestion not many of the others could fully get behind, but decided to respect anyway due to the power Sung exhibited back when fighting the Swarm. This was actually why Beck thought Sung needed help to begin with, since with all the summons he used to clear the Swarm, Beck figured he'd be running low on mana now. He was worried that Sung may run out of magical energy mid-fight or something. This was a concern that only went to confuse Sung, since maintaining his soldiers always cost him nothing. If you remember from one of my last videos, the only time Sung used mana was when he needed to regenerate his soldiers. So his magical energy was rarely, if ever, a problem for him.
What? I don't really know how it was in the manga or the light novel, but in the anime, his soldiers were dying a lot. Even he pointed it out, and because he didn't do any of the arising stuff. But wouldn't that have drained his mana as well? That statement doesn't make any sense. Because him saying arise and getting like more of the Ant Bros on his side, which he was doing in the light novel and manga, would have surely depleted his mana. So wouldn't that have taken a big chunk out of it, especially if he's doing that to all those ants? Or am I wrong? And in the anime, his army was getting overwhelmed by the ants, so he had to keep summoning them back. But in the light novel, it sounds like he was arising everybody as well. So yeah, I don't really get that.
This, however,
Maybe I'm
wasn't
missing
knowledge
something.
anyone was privy to, and Sung wasn't planning to share it with them now either. No, he instead simply stated how his summons didn't require as much magic energy as they thought. It was a statement that went to shock everyone equally, since what other weak point would Sung have if not for an unsustainable mana cost?
Yeah.
Sung wasn't gonna reveal any more than that though, so that was a question all would have to sit on.
Weak point.
Now, Sung had immediately recognized the Ant King, and the Ant King immediately
Maybe he
recognized
sunburns
him.
easy. He's quite pale.
Both were extremely powerful entities, but the Ant King's observations of such was spoken the exact same way that G.O.T once did. This brings us now to their face-off, where Sung's close proximity to the Ant King would lead viewers to think the outcome was already decided. I mean, here was this monster who just ragdolled Korea's sturdiest tank, and here was Sung casually walking into melee distance of him. The Ant King would see this as an opportunity to end the fight in one hit only, leading to the punch which would shock the world. You see, as soon as everyone saw this mage tank a hit with his face, every person watching was fully captivated. When the Ant King then got blown away by the return punch, several moments were taken for viewers to process what they just saw, then it's when they finally did, cheering could be heard everywhere.
Oh,
the
we
Ant
all
King
felt that
fully
too.
expected to at least send this new opponent flying, but when it neither died nor even budged, Sung barely gave it a moment to feel surprised.
I like AniNews' touch there of calling Sung Jin Woo an it, because in this moment, that is exactly what the Ant King would be looking at him like. This creature, you know? It's like, what is this thing? Why isn't it moving? So I like that simple description there.
No, he instead immediately responded with punches of his own. They were hits whose impacts were strong enough to literally shake the entire tunnel. The cameraman
So
was
cool,
struggling
man.
to understand
Look at
the
their
power
faces.
he was witnessing, since after seeing this ant destroy 6 S ranks like they were nothing, he never thought he'd see a display of force stronger than that. Like, he was leagues behind the S ranks above him, then they were easily gapped by the Ant King earlier. So, for Sung to come in and
So
stomp
good.
the ant like that, well,
So
the notion someone
good.
could be so powerful was just absurd to him. Now, when Sung saw his return punch did less damage than expected, he fully resolved himself to brute force this victory. If all he needed to do was bypass some armor, then that's exactly what he was going to do. The ensuing clash was a back and forth spar of hits so powerful that the reverberations of energy was enough to make those in proximity sick. The cameraman was the most susceptible, so he was even experiencing a bit of vertigo. Still, he maintained his composure and even smiled, since who
The vertigo is a nice touch, actually. I like that, because obviously it would throw off your equilibrium. I like that, especially with the movements and the vibrations and everything. Nice touch. That is actually something that could have been really cool. Just a simple phrase of that, because it is very realistic. That's a really nicely written in
wouldn't
thing.
when what he was broadcasting was their country's shining ray of hope? For the Ant King, who was on the receiving end of this beatdown, though its exoskeleton was likely more durable than any metal on the planet, Sung was still punching his way through it easily. The Ant King knew cracks were forming all around it, but he couldn't tell how bad it was due to a lack of pain receptors there. This in turn forced him to divert his attention to check it out, revealing the cracks had spread all across his entire body. Sung wasn't so naive as to miss out on this opportunity, since the moment he saw the Ant King was distracted, that's when he would hit him square in the face. It was a vicious impact that made clear beating Sung in a battle of strength wasn't possible.
In the light novel and manhwa, how do they showcase all the inner workings of someone's force? Especially like a monster like the Ant King. When he like looks at his armor, does it like show up like, I wonder how my armor is holding up. Let me just look quickly. I am distracted. And then Jinwoo goes, he is distracted. Like, is it that plainly obvious in the manhwa? How does it work?
Luckily, the Ant King knew it had other attacks, leading to the paralysis poison skill it developed through gluttony. That went exactly as we saw, ending in another ferocious punch that for the first time actually dealt damage. The impact from this one finally made the Ant King feel pain for once. That's when Sung would clue into the Ant King's emotions, which was an ability he first picked up back when he fought the High Orcs. He didn't think much about it then though, because there he thought he was simply reading their facial expressions and gestures. Now that he was reading a monster that had no facial expressions, that's when he started to think perhaps perception unlocked some sort of new ability. So, Sung would go on to use this in more ways than one, since sensing its fluctuating emotions now allowed him to track its presence easier.
True.
Where the Ant King's
And probably
speed usually
it's,
enabled him to lose his opponents quick.
And probably like it's fighting patterns as well, because if you like can sort of sense its emotions, you can like when it heightens and drops and stuff like that, you can sense its fighting patterns, right? If you can use it really well.
Sung could track him even if he lost sight of him. He could also read his emotions in a way that allowed him to know what it was planning.
There you go.
So
yeah.
when the Ant King's anxiety changed to happiness, that's when Sung knew its strategy had changed again.
Oh.
Now, the reason the Ant King didn't engage with speed to begin with is because it essentially wanted to show off its kingly powers first. Now that that wasn't working though, the Ant King knew this was no longer the time to flex. Little did he know a battle of speed was where Sung felt most confident, so despite the ant being significantly faster than it was before, keeping up with it was no more difficult than when the fight had first started. This
Jinwoo,
forced the
you're
Ant
so
King to fight
awesome.
on the defensive again, resulting in a constant retreat backwards that Sung took full advantage of.
It's so
With every
good,
step
man.
back it took, Sung would get more confident knowing full well the type of mental shock it was going through. He could feel exactly how shaken up this ant was. Then, it was in classic Sung Jin Woo fashion that he would first compliment both himself and how powerful he'd become, right before committing to a series of attacks which would finish the fight.
He's such a fuckhead, man. This guy's such a twat. I love it. I love that he's like fighting the ant, and in his head he's like, man, I'm so great. Look at my arms. Rippling. Yeah, every punch they like ripple a little bit, you know. In fact, I think I got bigger. My chest is looking pretty big too. I'm gonna punch him again. Oh man, look at my beautiful fists smacking him in the face. They're so well done. Oh man, I'm gonna get my nails done after this. God damn. Well, hold on. Oh shit. Look at that splatter of blood on the wall. It's reflecting my face like a mirror. I look so gorgeous today, smacking the shit out of his hand.
The ant's exoskeleton was all but shattered
This
now,
guy,
so Sung
man.
could go in with Critical Strike to finish it off. So it was after landing Critical Strike
Such a
dozens of
dick.
times over that's when the skill would upgrade itself to Mutilate. His Stomp of the Ant was what enabled this skill to evolve mid-fight. It was the damage from Mutilate which would cause the Ant King's survival instincts to kick in, leading it to fly away much like how we saw in the anime. What the ant saw behind it, though, was the absurd sight of a human flying too. This wasn't Sung's insane speed propelling him through the air, but rather his ruler's touch skill elevating him to the same level the Ant King was.
Oh.
The Ant King would then resort to the only move it thought it had left, only
That is something that wasn't really explained, because the light looked like it was bouncing off the walls and stuff like that. So Sung Jin Woo used Ruler's Touch on himself, much like telekinesis, in order to fly. I hope we get to see that a bit more.
to be shown it didn't even have numbers on Sung. Any advantages he thought it had was always immediately disproven with authority.
Yeah, strength, speed,
Sung's
numbers,
shadows
nothing.
would then make light work of the Ant King's army, including Tusk, who Sung felt the need to give an extra warning to. Since his attacks were especially dangerous, Sung basically said if any of them hit the humans, then he would never summon Tusk again. Now, all the Ant King could feel at the end of this was a pure sense of terror unlike any he'd ever felt before. For the first time in its life, it knew fear. It also sensed what it could only describe as an insurmountable obstacle, since no matter how hard it tried, it knew it could never beat Sung. So, in these final moments before its execution, all the ant felt was complete and utter defeat. It felt absolutely inferior knowing it couldn't fulfill its sole purpose for existing. The queen made it to deal with the strong humans, yet when the strongest appeared, it couldn't do anything. This was the existential thought the Ant King dealt with, while all Sung was focused on was the potential soldier he was about to gain. So, in order to ensure that process went smoothly...
Cut to the ant. Oh my god! This guy is terrifying! I'm gonna die! Cut to Jinwoo. This guy is gonna make a great trophy. I can't wait.
Sung first needed to make sure this ant was dead. He would finish the job, all while commenting how now the Ant King was looking like a proper insect. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode. This was truly an experience, and I'm glad that I get to share part of it with you. Now, as we near the end of the season with one episode left, I hope some of you will stick around to see what I cover next. I do these videos for other anime too, so if you want to know more about shows like ReZero, Danmachi, Tensura, and maybe even the beginning after the end, consider subscribing since you'll get to see those.
So AniNews is just a massive isekai, bro. I mean, it's funny because every single one of the anime he mentioned at the end, I watch. ReZero, Tensura, Danmachi, I watch all of them. So yeah, you know, kind of fuck with AniNews. I'm just saying, what videos has he uploaded recently? Let's have a little look. He did some Mushoku Tensei stuff in the past as well. So I mean, he's only done one ReZero video recently. Which has been a bit of a shame. Everything else in his channel has been solo leveling, but his solo leveling videos have crushed it, man. He did a season 1 recap. That's really cool. I like that. And then he did his power so far video. Before that, he was doing Danmachi, which is really cool. 100 ways to get his Sekai. How 100 Isekai protagonists got transported to another world. That's kind of cool. He's got like some more ReZero stuff we should probably check out as well. How the Overlord movie fits into the timeline. I haven't seen the Overlord movie yet, so he does Overlord as well. So yeah, any Isekai. Tons of Isekai stuff. I can see Rudis season 2 finale cut content video here. Okay. Oh, that's kind of a cool. He did about Roxy and Rudis and that thing. I won't say more. Alright. Man, I actually miss Mushoku Tensei. I'm looking forward to that. Is we getting more Mushoku Tensei? Man, so there you go. If you're a huge fan of any of the anime I just mentioned, which I'm sure you are, and I imagine you're big fans of solo leveling, then you should be subscribed to AniNews. The reason I'm saying this is literally because whenever I do any reactions, one thing that pisses me off, by the way, and I really want to highlight this, when I'm like searching for a video to react to or anything like that, let's say you guys recommend something in the comment section, and I search for it, and I'm trying to find the original video, and I can see other reaction channels have reacted to the video that you guys recommended. I will click on that video, and I'll go to the description, assuming that the video link will be there. And it never is. I have to be honest. Nearly every freaking big reaction channel these days, for some reason, does not link the video they are reacting to in their freaking description, which is the simplest, most small act of generosity you can do for a channel that you are taking the content from and reacting to the content from. Now, obviously, reaction content is protected under the fair use guidelines, so it's absolutely fine. And the fair use guidelines aren't YouTube's guidelines, that's real law. So you don't need to. But it's fucking common courtesy, man. Like, Jesus Christ. You wouldn't be able to make your videos if you didn't shout out the original content creators. So it always pisses me off. And please, make sure you hold other creators accountable for this, because they should be giving love to these people when I see that. And I hate to say it, but there's a lot of really big channels, especially in the anime scene, that just do not show any kind of love to the people they're reacting to the content of. So that's why I always try and reiterate it with AniNews, because the only reason I'm able to do these extra cut content videos That's because AniNews puts extra effort into making incredible videos for us all to enjoy and watch together. So, huge amount of respect and love for AniNews and everything he does. This was awesome. We got one more video which I'm excited to check out because obviously there was quite a lot in the finale. We saw the Chinese hunter, which I'm excited to see a little bit more of. We saw those weird dudes in the dungeon. We saw Jinwoo. These are a bit spoilers, by the way, so you might want to skip past if you haven't seen the last episode yet. We saw Jinwoo's dad. We saw like a lot, right? We even the end with the red gate, like there was a bunch of random stuff that was just thrown in there. So I'm actually very excited to see what was missed out. I think that'd be like I think that'd be really cool to see. How Diablo is strong. Oh, that'd be kind of a cool video to check out. So yeah, if you guys want me to react to any more, let me know in the comment section down below. But that is it. That is it. Solo leveling is done. We have finished solo leveling for now. Hopefully it will return. The one thing, a lot of people are saying they're presuming it's going to come out next year, but there's been no green light from the studio, and a lot of the people who work on the anime have said that they're not currently working on it, and there's a break happening. Obviously, they absolutely deserve a break, but the way it was worded was a bit worrying. So, I don't know, I got this... It's, on one hand, you would imagine it's like the John Wick scenario, you know? It's so unbelievably popular that surely they're going to give it the time it deserves. On the other hand, it's the world of anime. The world of anime is odd. Even if the anime is incredibly popular, doesn't necessarily mean anything. That's the problem with the world of anime. It's not like the world of TV, where if a show is incredibly popular, it just doesn't fucking matter. That thing's going to get funneled money. We're going to get more and more seasons of it. Unless it's on Netflix, then for some reason they just have these huge gaps. I have to admit, that is one of the things that I think has killed modern television, is the huge gaps between seasons. Whereas in before, the days of Game of Thrones and Walking Dead and all those things, and they were all at their peak, Vikings, freaking Sons of Anarchy, Breaking Bad, you would get them yearly. They would come out yearly, but now you get like, oh, here's one season, like Stranger Things. Here's one season, 5 years later, here's the last season. And it's like, there's such a fucking giant gap, it doesn't even make any sense. So, yeah, and I think, obviously, the big C didn't help with that anyway. I'm getting off tangent here. Yeah, solo leveling has been amazing, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see if it follows the anime curse, or if we get some next year, at least. I don't know. We're still really early in this year. At the time of recording this video, we're not even in April yet, man. 3rd month of the year. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed my reaction. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if I got anything wrong in the comment section down below, and I guess I'll see you guys for the last freaking video of Solo Leveling, episode 13. Anyway, like and subscribe. Have an awesome day, and as always, my friends, you will see me in the next video.